it couldn't be bigger than this. They've won 7 in a row, led by Julius Randle and Tom Thibodeau. And when you look at tonight's game, you really couldn't have a bigger one, because this is a team that you may play come playoff time, or you're vying for a 4 seed, 5 seed, 6 seed with this team, hopefully a 5 seed or at best a 4 seed. And so this is a game that really tells you everything. And it's 69-69. To give you an idea of the box score, you have 20 from Randall and 14 from Derrick Rose. He was 6 for 6 from the floor at one point. He's 7 for 8 right now. But this is a Knicks team that everything has come together in the last 10 games, the last 7 games. And tonight, it couldn't be bigger. Hopefully we're off the air by the end of the game so we could catch the end.
Yeah, it's a huge time to be a Knicks fan. I mean, longest win streak in 7 seasons, and look to make it 8 tonight against the Hawks. Hope all tied up right now. Talk about guys that have just been huge for the Knicks. Julius Randle, 7-game stretch. He's 31 points per game and 8.6 rebounds in his last 5. So, I mean, he's been really dominant. And then there's been a lot of surprises with the team. RJ Barrett, 17 points per game, and he has a higher 3-point percentage than Damian Lillard, JJ Redick, Jason Tatum, and Donovan Mitchell, just to name a few. So all those stats point to 2 guys on this Knicks team that really can help carry them to maybe potentially a 4 or 5 seed. And they've been really hot right now. You got to credit Coach Tom Thibodeau. He's been the leader of this team. He's really carried them and took them to the next level from last season. So this team has a lot of buzz around it, and depending on where this Hawks game goes, you could be looking at potentially a 4 or 5 seed for this Knicks team in a couple of games.
And you just hear New Yorkers perking up, talking about the Knicks again, and it is such a cool thing, because it has been so long since we were all talking about the Knicks, and all of a sudden, watching, the Knicks won again tonight. The Knicks won, and now it's 7 in a row, and tonight would be a really big one against the Hawks. But you're completely right to credit Thibodeau, because this is not a team that is stacked with talent. You've seen a lot out of RJ Barrett. You've seen a lot out of course, Julius Randle and Derrick Rose, a huge addition, among others. But Thibodeau is the guy who has gotten this team culturally just in the right place, because it's not a team that up and down the roster terrifies you, but they have just got it figured out offensively when it comes to they're just all on the same page, and it seems like the locker room is all on the same page. And especially in the game of basketball, it just means so much. And they're at a point where they've figured it out in the locker room, and the results have been on the court. No question about it.
Yeah, and Tom Thibodeau, just to talk about him more. I mean, I think it's huge for a team with a young core of guys to bring in an experienced coach like him to really help mold them. I think in the past, the Knicks have struggled with finding the right guy for that job, but clearly they have with Tom Thibodeau. And I think it's going to be interesting when they get near the playoffs, how he coaches that team, maybe to extend the series. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but the season is coming to an end soon, and you've got to start thinking about that with the Knicks. I think a huge thing with these upcoming games, though, is to not fall into that 7th seed in the playoffs and have to get a play in. I think being top 6, especially this year, is going to be huge for the Knicks. And they can cement top 6, then that's going to be a huge step forward for them when they enter playoffs.
Yeah, and just looking at their schedule ahead, and you want to get to maybe 40 wins here to be in the place you want seeding-wise, and they're at 32 right now. And you look ahead, Atlanta now, Toronto tomorrow is a great matchup. They play Phoenix twice here, Denver, the Clippers, the Lakers, Charlotte, and Boston to round out this season on May 15 and May 16. And those are teams that I think they can beat, and it'll be very interesting when you get down there. That could be very decisive about how it shakes up. You have a couple of tough Western Conference opponents here down the line. You have a couple of softballs, and then you have a couple really competitive ones, and tonight is right there. But if you get the seeding that you want, as long as you're not 6, because if you're 6, you might be looking at, well, not Brooklyn. Brooklyn's going to be 2, but you might be looking at Milwaukee, right? That's going to be tough. But if you can get to 4 or 5, you love where you are. I think there's no reason why this Knicks team shouldn't win a first playoff series. I think there's no reason why Knicks fans shouldn't be excited about the prospect of going to the second round this year. That's not unrealistic at all to me.
No, I definitely agree. And if the Knicks end up locking a 4 or 5 seed and avoiding that matchup with the Bucks, then you can definitely see them taking down an opponent like Boston or taking out maybe Charlotte. I think both of those are opponents that the Knicks could end up besting in a best of 7 series, especially Charlotte. We saw that last night when they beat them 107-99. So you definitely saw them overcome that kind of team. And I think especially Boston is as a good team. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, both dominant players this year, but the Knicks are a top 5 defensive team, and if anybody can limit those 2 players, it is the Knicks. And I think Tom Thibodeau is also a coach that will be able to send that game to a game 6 or 7, and possibly the Knicks win that series. So I think those opponents the Knicks should want in the playoffs. I think a team like the Heat are more dangerous. They're 30-28 with Bam, Butler, and Dragic all missing 5+ games. And I think obviously with healthy and Oladipo on that team, they can definitely make a move up the Eastern Conference. I think that's the one team that will present a problem for the Knicks if they are a 4 or 5 seed. But the other 2 teams that the Knicks could draw, I think, have great matchups for New York, and they can definitely make a move into the second round of the playoffs.
I couldn't agree more. I almost think that if you – I don't want to call it an expectation because this is a team that came in with no expectations. But where you are now, you're not wrong to say, yeah, I expect it, or at least I'm very hopeful that it happens. At the minimum, pushing a first-round playoff series far and showing that, giving a little hope to this city that has had none in terms of basketball. And when I say this city, I don't want to exclude the Brooklyn Nets because they are a part of this city, but they don't necessarily feel like they're a part of the fabric of New York City basketball. Of course, they're Jersey to us, they're Jersey to most people. And they're just quietly so good, but we're still talking about the Knicks here, and I don't think we're wrong to do that. This is a Knicks town. It always will be a Knicks town. The Nets can make all the noise they want, but we're tuning into the Knicks here.
Yeah, I mean, when you bring up the Nets, it's clear that the Knicks are the heart of the team. I mean, you got Harden, KD, and Kyrie all on the Nets, but the Garden is still the best place to be to watch New York basketball, and the Knicks are still the most exciting team to talk about basketball-wise. I think more people are interested to see what the Knicks do in the playoffs than really what the Nets do. I think if the Nets have all their guys healthy, KD, Kyrie, and Harden, they're going to be the clear favorites in the East. They've definitely got some problems in the front court, how they're going to be able to defend guys like Giannis and Embiid. But I think when you've got 3 stars like that of that prowess, then it takes a lot of the fun out of the game, especially for pulling and making an upset. And I think the Knicks bring that to New York. They're a gritty team. They bring 110% every night. And that's why we're talking about them instead of this Nets team, which is basically like if they're healthy, they're the favorites. If they're not the favorites. I think that's the question with the Nets. But with the Knicks, it's really a talk about these young players and the coaching of Tom Thibodeau.